up to Talkin' Jets? My name is Ryan, and I'll be your pilot today. I am joined alongside my co-pilot, Mr. Dom C. Dom, how you doing tonight? We missed you last week.
Yeah, man. Tough time of year, man. I got wrestling tournaments for the kid and swim and this and that. I'm all over the place. So, schedule's a juggle, that's for sure.
That's all right. We're happy to have you here. Chat, we're happy to have you here as well. We're going to talk a little bit about the Jets game this past weekend, as well as should the Jets run it back with Devontae and Aaron Rodgers. We'll talk a little bit about the GM search. We have a few names that have popped into the building. We do have a poll question in the chat if you would like to vote on this. Does the win versus the Jacksonville Jaguars really matter? Or is it one of those hollow victories at the end of the year that just ruins our draft stock and no one's going to remember it next year? And it's just all, people bitching at each other, whatnot. Dom, what do you think? Did the moral victory matter to you?
Listen, if I'm speaking honestly, in the grand scheme of things, Ryan, I don't think it mattered. I don't think if we lost out, we weren't going to get any much higher than, we're going to fall between picks 5 and 10. That's just where it's going to be. Out of the range for the top two quarterbacks, if that was in anyone's kind of wheelhouse or hope. So, I don't know if it really mattered per se in that sense. Listen, I'm not going to say I was upset that we won, but I'm not going to say I would have been upset if we lost either. You know what I mean? It was just one of those things. It was just like, okay, game's on. I totally expected them to lose at the end. I mean, yet another bonehead end of game time management decision by Jeff Ulbrich. I expected them to get the ball back with a minute left, 2 timeouts, and go win the game. But alas, they didn't.
It's brutal. Because I agree. I do think I want to see good performances with losses. That's honestly where I'm at. But I'll spin it this way. I'll try to give it as much of a positive spin as I can. And going into the year, or going into the back part of this year, the 2 games that I thought the Jets could win and should win, it's the Jacksonville game, and it's the final game against Miami. I still think we're going to win that final game versus Miami. We're going to wind up with 5 wins. And like you said, we're going to be picking in that, probably 8 to 12 ranges, right? I have us penciled in. That sucks, but at the same time, it's not like, oh man, the Jets, we've been really terrible all the time. Like, no, we can't win close games. We're a poorly coached, good roster that can't win close games. There's holes in our roster, but that's where I feel like we honestly are. And I can't find it in myself to get worked up. Now, last year, I blew my lid over beating the Commanders, but that was because we looked so dominant, and then we did not look so dominant, and we needed a 55-yard field goal as time expired to squeak out a win that ultimately ended up costing us one of Marvin Harrison Jr., Malik Neighbors, or Rome Odunze. But our new left tackle, Olu Fashanu, is looking pretty friggin' solid. As far as the glass half full thing goes, Will McDonald, Olu, both feeling pretty good. So I think having them win helps. I do think there is some moral victory for the players because they are trying to win every single time. But more so than not, I think the performance of Aaron Rodgers and Davante Adams at least gives us the thought, maybe they're not washed. Maybe they can come back. Maybe a head coach who was struggling with this decision is looking at Rodgers saying, okay, he could be a bridge quarterback for a year. I know the most I'm going to have to deal with this guy is 1 year. But I would still allow the GM or head coach, whoever it is, to make the ultimate decision on Aaron Rodgers. If they want to keep him, if they don't want to keep him. I don't think we're tied in either way, but I think that is still a net positive for us. And if the Jets do, say, go the Vrabel route, well, Rodgers looking halfway decent in this Todd Downing system. That's nothing wrong with bringing in Vrabel and him saying, well, guess what, Downing, you're just going to stay the play caller because we've already got Jordan Travis learning it. We've already got Aaron Rodgers playing it. And then if this stinks, we get rid of Downing, you bring in a new OC, you draft a new quarterback in 2026, and, Bob's your uncle. What are your thoughts on that?
Listen, I'm not letting one win versus a really shitty Jacksonville team kind of sway my thought pattern or at least give me some sort of false sense of hope. I'm still on board. And I'll say this. I don't think that Aaron Rodgers is the problem. I don't think he's the biggest problem that we have. But I'm ready to turn the page. I am. I'm this whole season put a really bad taste in my mouth. I'm ready to turn the page. I don't want to be part of Diana Rossini's, witch hunt. I don't want to be part of the mainstream media's, butt end of the joke.
Oh, but when he leaves and goes to another team and he plays well next year, we will be the butt of the joke regardless. Like there is
okay.
no not being the butt of the joke. We are the entire fucking whole, my friend.
Yeah. I think that we should just really turn the page, set ourselves up for the new GM and head coach to kind of build and do with this team what they want. Because, although, like I said, Aaron Rodgers hasn't been the biggest problem of what went wrong with this team, keeping him could cause, like a downward spiral and ramifications that could affect us long term, i.e. $63 million if he's on the roster day 5 of next year. And, then trying to figure out that and probably having to renegotiate and kick more money down the road for Devontae Adams, this, that, and the other thing. Yeah, I'm ready to turn the page, man. I still am. I don't know what that means. I don't know if it means a shit season in 2025 and look forward for 26 and beyond. But I understand why we pivoted. I was all for the pivot. I don't think it worked, and I'm ready to cut my losses. That's me.
Now, do you think there's a quarterback in this draft that you would target at all? I know you were a big Allard guy. He's going.
Yeah, I like Drew. I like Drew Allard. There's no one in, and I think he was even a questionable pick for me in the top 10, to be, if we're being honest. So no, I like the top 2 guys are going to go within the top 3 picks at worst. We were never getting up there unless we were going to trade up there.
Now, if we lost, we would have been at the 4th pick, Dom. Just saying.
Yeah,
I know.
We still wouldn't have been in the top. We still wouldn't have been in the top 2 or top 3. That looks like that's where the 2 quarterbacks are going to go. So yeah. So there's that. I don't know. Like, is there guys that I'd be willing to take a shot on later on? Sure. I happen to think, maybe like a 3rd round pick on one of these guys and see if he can find
Carson
lightning in a
Beck
bottle
or something like that.
Carson Beck is exactly the guy I'm thinking about. He's got some of the traits that can show that he could be a viable NFL quarterback. There's been a lot of regression in his game from last year. If he came out last year, I think, he's probably in the mix with the J.J. McCarthy's and the Bo Nixes of the world. But he came back and, he did himself a disservice and struggled a little bit. So, but the talent is still there. Won't cost you all that much. There's, with Garrett Nussmeier, who is another one of my favorites, and Drew Allard going back to school, it really it really kind of circles that QB3, more or less as Jalen Milroe. And although I love the athletic traits of Jalen Milroe, that's a hard nut to crack again in the top 10 for a guy that is probably not ready to play quarterback in the NFL.
Do you think he'll be ready to play quarterback in 2026? Like if he sits, let's say he sits behind a year of Rodgers. Like, let's use our crystal ball a little bit. You think that are his traits attractive enough from a physicality standpoint that you would roll the dice on it, or you think other players and the field at quarterback is the better route?
I like Milroe. I do. He reminds me a lot of a young Jordan Love coming out of college. He's much more of a dual threat than Love was, but Love was very athletic. Milroe is uber athletic. There's a good chance Milroe runs in the low 4.3s. You know what I mean?
Wild.
Yeah, I mean, and he's he's as dual threat comes. I think 21 touchdowns on the ground this year already. Thrown for 16, has 9 interceptions. He has a really good touch, has a really strong arm, good for that long vertical ball. He struggles in the middle of the field. He struggles with some of that process and stuff. That's the stuff that like quarterbacks need to kind of learn and develop. And again, a lot of the same things that people were saying when Jordan Love came out of Nevada. Jordan Love was, selected. Green Bay selected him at the end of the first round. He was going to be the developmental project. And, he was put in a place not only behind Aaron Rodgers. I don't know how much Aaron Rodgers helped him early on, but he was put in a place with LaFleur and in a really bright offensive mind. So if you brought in an offensive mind like LaFleur to be your head coach, then sure, I'd roll the dice on Milroe to just kind of sit and see what happens. Again, not at pick 10 or wherever we're going to be picking. You know what I mean?
Is there a position that kind of stands out to you at the top of this draft where you're kind of like, that would be the direction I'd like to see us steer?
I got to be honest with you, Ryan. This draft is not very top heavy. I'd say the positions of there's the two quarterbacks that are going to go early, and I think they're okay prospects. I don't think they're phenomenal prospects at all. Both of them would have graded out as no higher than QB5 for me if compared to last year's class. So I had the top three big names and JJ McCarthy graded out higher than I have both Cam Ward and Shedeur Sanders. So you got those guys. You got two really nice cornerback prospects in Heisman Trophy winner Travis Hunter and Will Johnson. I know Mason Graham seems to be like a name that everyone likes, and I think he's a great player. I don't necessarily see the fit on the Jets because I think he's probably too similar to Quinnen Williams. He would probably be a good fill-in for Quinnen Williams, not play aside Quinnen Williams. And the offensive line, do you really want to spend another top 10 pick on an offensive lineman? At some point, somebody's got to come in here and be able to fill in a spot with, on the offensive line without a first round pick. And even those guys there's a lot of question marks around them. So it's a really deep class at defensive tackle. It's a really deep class at edge. I like some of those guys. I happen to like, it's a very thin class in my opinion at wide receiver, but I happen to like three guys very much so. So that's probably the way I'd go. Tetairoa McMillan from Arizona, 6'6", 220 pounds, big, long catch radius, a much better, much more athletic Allen Lazard prototype, like a big slot. Then you got Luther Burden, who's, your yards after the catch guy. I think he's criminally underrated by most people. I think he's a top 10 talent in this class. And Emeka Egbuka, the slot receiver from Ohio State, who learned under guys like Garrett Wilson and Marvin Harrison, and all those who's the other guy in Seattle? JSN, yeah, exactly.
Olave. Yeah.
So he learned under all those, and he's that kind of receiver. Again, more of a slot guy, but I think he can do a little bit more than that. Like he's a very precise route runner, knows how to find the soft spots in zones, very reliable hands. Had a little bit of a down year last year, but really turned it up this year. He's a guy that, those three are the guys that I would kind of pinpoint, especially if you move on from Rodgers and Tay Adams.
Yeah, I would say the Rodgers and Devontae piece of it is a big puzzle for my draft board. Like if Devontae's coming back, and Rodgers, obviously, if Rodgers comes back, Devontae's coming back. If those two are back, I do think there's a possibility that Lazard renegotiates and comes back on a cheaper contract, just to kind of keep that, continuity there. And then I don't think we're going wide receiver earlier. If we do move off Rodgers, I think Lazard's gone. I think Devontae Adams is gone. And then you run into the situation of like Garrett may not be here all that much longer. Yeah. I would absolutely go receiver. So if following your thought process with no Rodgers, no Adams, I do like that a lot.
And especially because, like I said, I just don't think that the depth in this class is there. So I'd want to get my hands on one of those guys. Again, there's going to be some more wide receivers, but those guys I think are a notch above talent wise than the rest of the class.
Now, I had this conversation with Tigo last week, and maybe it becomes a little less of a conversation now. I guess it depends how the quarterbacks rise and fall in this draft process. But let's say the Jets are picking a little high to be going after like a Milroe or that quarterback in the first round. But you think based on where they're picking at the top of the second round, there's a few quarterbacks that could go before them. Obviously the Titans, the Browns, like there's a few spots in front of us that could pull the trigger. you're now looking at potential of moving into the first round to go get your guy and know you're getting him. But to me, that screams you're trading away the 2026 first round pick. I don't want to do that. 2026 first round pick's too valuable to me. What's your thoughts?
No, it's too it's much too valuable, especially since you're going to probably want to keep ammunition because the quarterback class seems to be a lot more robust than this class. Listen, I don't know if trading up for any of these guys in for quarterback 3 in this class, whoever it is, if it's, you know, whatever your choice is, if it's Milroe, if it's Jackson Dart, if it's you know, Rourke from Indiana, whoever your preference is as quarterback 3, I don't think any of them are probably worthy of a trade up for me, especially since, like I said, the 2026 draft picks are going to be a lot more valuable, and we already don't have a third rounder in 2026 because of Riddick.
So if you're offered a trade down, would you take the picks in next year's draft as opposed to this year's draft if you get better value?
Well, the Jets have 10 picks in this draft, so yes, I think I would. And again, there's not many blue chippers in this draft class. Like, you know, they and I use that word very, very loosely. You know, Travis Hunter is one, and I'd argue to say he's probably the only one. I think there's some very good. I think there's some good players, you know, in Abdul Carter or you know, Mason Graham, so on and so forth. But I don't think there's anything blue chip. And there's a tier of like maybe 7 guys, including the 2 quarterbacks, because they're 2 quarterbacks that are going to go high. So there's maybe a tier of those 2 quarterbacks and maybe 5 other players. And then I think from 11 to like 45, it's going to be a mishmash of guys. So if you're not going to get one of those top 7, you know, like very good or premier players in draft class, regardless of position, I think if you have an opportunity to move down to acquire picks, especially for next year, you do it.
So what you're saying is we should have lost the Jaguars and had a top 4 pick. Wouldn't be,
well, you know
concerned.
what? So, yeah, you can. You know, I hear what you're saying, and I know you're. You know, it's maybe a little bit tongue in cheek, exactly. But then again, you're taking, like I said, I and this is just me. You know, everyone's going to be different, right? Here, as we stand in the middle of December, you know, the 2 quarterbacks, Abdul Carter, Mason Graham, Will Johnson, the cornerback from Michigan, and Tetero McMillan, and Ashton Genty, the running back. I'd say that's the first tier. However you want to rank them, you know, that's probably the first tier. And if you think about it, all right, edge rusher, you can always use an edge rusher, and that's a premium position. You know, running back, although the kid is super, super talented, it's not a premium position. Do you really want to spend a top 5 pick on a running back? Probably not. Defensive tackle, do you really want to spend another top 5 pick on a defensive tackle, especially one that's not going to complement the $25 million defensive tackle you have on the team already? Probably not. You know, Tetero McMillan's there. Yeah, I mean, he's good. Maybe you lose out on him. And then you have cornerback, who, although I think Will Johnson's a phenomenal player, you know, he's my second ranked player in the class. We just spent a number 4 overall pick on a cornerback. At some point, like, I don't know,
spread the love.
Like spread the love, like shop elsewhere. And again, this is just the way that this draft class has fallen, man. It'd be a completely different story. I might be a little bit more pissed off if there was a Drake May, you know, like a legit quarterback 3 that was available and we lost out the opportunity at that, but we don't. There's not. So at this point, you know, you know, you want to take the best player available and find a spot for him. If you're in the top 5, that's great. But you're probably going to end up with a defensive tackle that kind of mimics the one you already have on the team. You know, again, you already allotted a lot of money towards that position. How many defensive tackles can you have top 5 in the top 5? Cornerback is the same thing. So I don't know, man.
Where do you stand on the offensive lineman side of it? Like, what those top 2 guys would be? Let's see. You've got
Kelvin Banks from Texas and Will Campbell from LSU. So, I think Will Campbell's a guard, like for sure. I know he's
Mhm.
played tackle in the NFL, but it's already been verified. He's gonna have sub 33 arms. I know that's a big talking point. But 33, like AVT has 32.25 inch arms, and that's probably
Mhm.
along the lines of where Will Campbell's going to fall.
Mhm.
Will Campbell is a very, very, he's stout, he's strong, he's a mauler in the run game. I don't know. I mean, I just don't know if a lot of teams are going to see him as a tackle, just like they didn't see AVT as a tackle. Could he play
Mhm.
tackle at the next level in a pinch, to fill in? Absolutely could. Um, do I think that's the best spot for him? Probably not. You watch him get beat by speed. Not only does he have short arms, but he's got small hands and doesn't have that latch that you really want those offensive tackles to have, that grip strength.
Mhm.
So his game is probably best suited to be inside. So are you spending a top 5 pick on a top 10 pick on a guard? Probably not. And then Kelvin Banks is just, he's a good player, but he's not top 10 material in my mind. Like, there's a lot. He leaves a lot of meat on the bone game in and game out. He's
Mhm.
not nearly as fine-tuned as someone like Olu, who we took at 11, someone like 𝐃𝐨𝐦 𝐂, who went and early in the round. He's not even, like I said, my top ranked tackle is Kelvin Banks, and compared to last year's class, he'd be offensive tackle 7 in the class.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. Last year's draft was just studly across the
Last
board.
year's draft was special, man, for sure.
Now, as far as the tight end position goes, because that's kind of like when I look at our team and the weapons we have, even though Rodgers doesn't utilize the tight end a crazy ton, it's clearly a weakness for us. Ruckert's going into his final year. He's been very underwhelming so far. Conklin's not, I don't think they're going to bring Conklin back in any capacity. What are your thoughts on the tight end class, specifically the top? Now, everyone loves the idea of trading down to possibly get more draft picks and then select someone at a position that might be more advantageous in the middle parts of the round, like a tight end, like a safety, like something like that. My thought is the only way we're going to be able to trade down is if Ashton Jeanty is there for us and we take a little bit less to move down. Like, I don't think it's going to be a good trade down where you're getting a ton of assets one way or the other. But if you were to slide back or maybe stay put or win a few games and you wind up picking at 12, whatever it is, where do the tight ends for you fall in this draft class? I see Colston Loveland, the tight end from Michigan, going high, and I see Tyler Warren, the tight end from Penn State, going high.
Yeah. So running back and tight end are probably the 2 deepest positions in this class. And right up there, edge isn't too far off, and neither is defensive tackle. But you probably have a dozen guys that are taken in the first 4 rounds at tight end, which is an anomaly, when you compare it to the past couple draft classes. So there's a lot of talent. All right. So you talked about Colston Loveland. Colston Loveland had a down year this year. And that mainly had to do about the lack of ability to throw the ball at Michigan. Last year with J.J. McCarthy, I mean, he was studly. He's your prototypical receiving tight end. He's in the mold of Dalton Kincaid. That's the type of guy he's going to be. He's going to be a real big threat in all passing situations from all spots. In line, from the slot. He can even split out wide at times. He's got like that kind of skill set, Dalton Kincaid. Tyler Warren is much more of your all-around tight end. He's much more Trey McBride. Can do everything and does everything very well. He was your award winner. I forgot what the name of the award is. I don't know if it's Mackey or whatnot. The best tight end in the nation.
Mackey sounds right.
Yeah. He does a little bit of everything. I mean, he's bigger. He can block a little bit, a lot better than Colston Loveland. He's going to play more of your flats and your intermediate route running stuff. He's a former college quarterback. I mean, Penn State runs him in the oh my God, I'm drawing a blank. I'm sick. I'm sorry. What's the formation where they line up the quarterbacks
Wildcat.
away? Wildcat. Yeah, they run him in the Wildcat. He's a former college quarterback. He does a little bit of everything. He runs the ball. He throws the ball. he's physical. He can get up the seam, although he doesn't have blazing speed. He can bust one up the seam in a while. He improved his hands a lot from last year, so he's a little bit more reliable. So he's more, like I said, Trey McBride. And look at Trey McBride. Trey McBride's having a great season this year. He's not scoring, but he's having a great season. I think 80 receptions already, and it's year 3. So took a little time, took a little adjustment, as it usually does for tight ends. Trey McBride didn't come right out the gun, smoking. And I think that's probably the route that Tyler Warren would go. There's some other guys later on. Harold Fannin Jr. from Bowling Green, small school kid, light, 245 pounds, but leads the nation in receptions and reception yards. I mean, he is a true vertical threat, more along the lines of someone like Kyle Pitts, like that type of tight end, where or Evan Engram, much more receiver than a Dalton Kincaid. This is a guy that runs routes like a wide receiver. And he could probably be had in the 3rd round or so on and so forth. There's so many other guys that that are available or that would be available later on. So I don't know if you necessarily have to invest the 1st rounder in this draft class and make sure you come away with one, although it wouldn't be a bad idea. I think you could still find good tight ends later on that'll be, effective NFL pros. But yeah, I mean, listen, if tight end was that important, you missed out on the generational guy, in this past draft. And, I'm not going to start that argument because we've heard
Twitter's been nonstop with it. You can't get rid of that fucking argument.
Yeah, we've heard it for so long, but yeah, like, listen, tight end's definitely going to be an area of importance, just because we're not going into you can't go into the season with Zach Kuntz and Jeremy Ruckert as your only options. I mean, I think they're probably long shots for the roster at this point, the way they've been playing.
So I see Wild Waves comment in here. I just want to throw this at you. If we trade Brees for a second, Wild Wave says he'd love J.T. Do you think there's any possibility with Brees going into his final year that the Jets do make a move like that? Because we could be in great position to get this Studley running back after all the other top players go off the board. And if everyone else is kind of in that weird middle ground and Brees is a tradable commodity on a low end contract, do you think there's any thought to moving Brees?
So I don't think there's going to be any thought in moving Brees. First off, I don't think you'll get a second for him. I think you'll be lucky, going into the last year of his deal. Not a lot of teams like to pay running backs in second deals. So I think the value is probably going to be lower. I think you'd be lucky to get a 4th round pick. And at that point, I wouldn't trade him. Genty's great. There's no denying the talent that he has. Again, it's a really, really deep running back class. You can get somebody who can produce if you wanted to add more youth and a different runner. There's no reason that any team should come out of this draft without taking one of these running backs. There's going to be guys taken in the 3rd, 4th, 5th round that are, good NFL producers, really good. So, Genty, I know, has had a phenomenal season, but as good as he is, and he's phenomenal, he is not perfect. He's put the ball on the ground 6 times this year. 6 fumbles. He's got a lot of tread on his tires. A
lot of wear on his tire.
He's worn out a lot of tread on those tires. I think over 300 touches the past 2 years. Although he's capable as a receiver, they don't utilize him as one all that much, so that's still a question mark. I just think that like I said, I think this class is so deep. It's not an area that I feel like I need to make sure that I get a guy early on. Again, going back to the wide receiver, I think that pool is real limited. For me, I'd rather spend the capital and get one of those top guys, knowing that in the 2nd, 3rd, 4th round, the pickings are going to be slim comparatively to the tight ends or the running backs. But again, that's just me.
Not to mention we're going to have a pretty high 1st round pick, a pretty high 2nd round pick. And in the 3rd round, we have Detroit's 3rd round pick. And it's going to be a late 3rd. So it's not like we have one at the top end of that round either. I do think we have picks in every single round, I believe.
We have multiple picks in every round. I'll give it to you. Hang on, I got it up here.
Full order. Okay, so Jets have a first, a second, a third. We have 1 4th. We have 1 5th. No, 2
fifths.
We got 2 fifths.
And 2 sixths.
We've got 2 sixths. And then
no seventh.
Nothing in the 7th.
So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 picks that we have. I thought we had 9, but I could be wrong.
So our final pick is pick 207. Last pick in the before the compensatory picks in the 6th round.
Yeah. Now, I don't know if we're going to be eligible for any compensatory picks based off of free agents that signed this year.
I don't think so.
That's a good question.
Unfortunately, we're not going to get anything for Son Reddick next year either. I would imagine he's not signing a very big contract.
Probably not.
I don't know.
Compensatory picks. Jets are unlikely to receive compensatory picks 2025 draft. Let's see. I thought we might be in line to get one for Breece Hall, but
Bryce Hall?
Not Breece Hall. Bryce Huff. Excuse me. But we signed somebody that kind of negated that out. I forgot who it was. Anyhow, yeah, it doesn't look like we're going to get any compensatory picks. If we do, it'll be super, super late.
I saw an interesting comment from, I think it was NYJ Matt. Let me just see if I could find it real fast. Yeah, so I'm ready to ask the question, is Brock Bowers a fourth quarter check down merchant when the Raiders are down multiple scores? So let me see if I'll throw this picture up on the screen. So this is Brock Bowers' stats by quarter right now. So everyone claiming he's having a fantastic year. He is having a really good year. I don't want to, poo-poo on that. But very heavily skewed towards the fourth quarter with the amount of yards, like almost double the amount of yardage.
Well, they're behind. I mean, if you think about it, they're a team playing from behind, so they're throwing the heck out of the ball.
But all those yardage, that's what I think Matt's saying is like all the love that Bowers is getting. Is it purely because like they stink? Like, is he having the equivalent to an Allen Robinson, Blake Bortles kind of season where they're just down all the time, so there's just tons of yards to be had? Is that what's going on with Bowers, or is he the real jilt, Dom?
Nah, he's the real deal. I mean, these if you look at the targets, I mean, it's really skewed towards the fourth quarter, but that's a direct result, proponent of how bad that team is and always playing from behind and always throwing the ball. So you take that away. I mean, the kid's good. There's no denying he's a talented player, and he's going to be a talented player in the league for a long time.
The correct answer was Olu was the right pick, Dom, and you should not be giving so much clout to an opposing team's player.
I am not saying Olu was not the right pick. I mean, listen, if you have the chance to secure a franchise-like bookend left tackle at any time, I think you do it. I do.
So you know what's going to happen? We're going to be the New York Nittany Lions in 2 years' time. We're going to have Olu at left tackle. We're going to take Abdul Carter at the top end of this draft. We're going to get Tyler Warren, tight end. And then next year, we're going to go all in to go get Allard at the top of the draft next year.
Yeah,
it's going to happen.
You might as well go get Chris Singleton, the running back, too. He's a stud.
Go for it. Why not?
Yeah.
All right. I like the whole Jamar Chase Burrow magic, so we can try to emulate that here. Why not? Takes a year or two for the tight ends to develop, so taking one this year might not be the worst idea for a young signal caller next year.
Yeah.
I like the idea of adding so many talented players. One, to obviously help us next year. Two, to give Jordan Travis as much as possible to work with. And three, if you don't, then we're locked, stocked, and loaded for the first time in what feels like forever for a young quarterback to come in 2026.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Let's see. Let's see what happens. We all of this is just a bunch of just throwing shit against the wall and seeing what sticks
Mhm.
until we have a GM and a head coach in place and really find out what their vision is and what their wants or needs are.
Mhm.
Tied in with, Rodgers going back into the darkness to see what the hell he wants to do, because he has said openly he has no idea if he wants to play next year. And to me, that sounds like somebody who doesn't really want to play next year.
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like if he's having fun the last half of this year, then he might feel like, hey, I gave it the old college try. I enjoyed this last little bit. I'm good tapping out. Maybe he waits till the head coach comes in and says, maybe the head coach says, hey, we want you back if you're going to come back. If not, go make your decision. We have to make our financial decision by X date. I have no idea how it's going to go, how it's going to shake down.
If I had to bet, I'd still lean on Rodgers isn't coming back, whether it's head coach and GM decide they want to go to a different way or it's his choice. Correct. I would still lean on he's not going to be a Jet next year.
I hope he retires if he's not a Jet. I really don't want to see Brett Favre 2.0 with him going to another team and just having like 4,700 yards and like 40 touchdowns. Like that's what I like, that PTSD side of my head as a Jet fan is where that's going to take me. And I don't want to see it. Just retire, Rodgers. That's it.
Yeah, but if that happens, that happens. I mean, listen, we tried.
It
didn't work.
In 2 years, it should have been us.
We tried, it didn't work, and moving on.
If we think that could be there, I'm fine with him for a bridge quarterback for a year. I'm more team Aaron.
Yeah, but hang on one
Devontae
second.
back.
Can I say
was
something
like
real
a month
quick?
ago. Yes. Go.
Can I say something real quick?
Sure.
You don't pay a bridge quarterback $63 million and have him burn into your cap.
That's what it is.
Burn into your cap for 2 years. It's 60. You're committing to $63 million if he's on the team next year. A bridge quarterback is
$63 million dead cap hit as opposed to a $48 million dead cap hit this year, or whatever it is.
Correct. I'd rather take.
You're not paying him $48 million. It's just that's what you.
No, but you're committing that to the roster. You're committing $48 million, in dead cap or lack $48 million in the ability to use those funds more so then that's why I would take it all now. You free up everything. You're almost the slate is completely wiped clean instead of a $63 million, that whatever it costs to have him on the roster in 25 plus the dead cap that spreads now into 26 and 27. It's 3 years from now. You're still going to be paying a chunk of money to this guy. Like, I don't know.
Take all your medicine 26. Done. See?
I'd rather take the medicine in 25 and start to hopefully, produce and start to produce in 26. Exactly. So, listen, I get it, man. He's the best quarterback that we've seen play in a long, long time. And
he's starting to look better now. Like, that's the part they're like, like he just objectively looks better now than he did prior to the
yeah, because he's healthy. He's healthier, I should say. And there maybe there's something to that, but I mean, I just don't know if the long term health of this team and this roster and the ability to build is having him on there and that money just kind of the juice ain't worth the squeeze for me.
Phil comes in and says, Dom, how'd you think we get Vrabel? What GM does he like?
I don't know what GM he likes. I'd say the odds that we get Vrabel are very low.
Where do you think he goes?
I think he could. I think he could end up in Las. I think he can end up in Las Vegas.
I agree
with Brady.
That was the other team.
Pretty sure they're going to move on from Antonio Pierce after this year. I think he can go there. I wouldn't rule out Chicago. I think if he wants the job in Chicago, Chicago's going to get to choose between him and Ben Johnson. I think those are probably better options. I think we're probably third or fourth on the pecking order. Listen, if they do something crazy, Yeah, I don't know about I mean, maybe Jacksonville. I don't know. But I can say this. I think if we do something crazy,
Hmm.
or if something in the NFL happens crazy, and for some reason Cleveland cuts ties with Stefanski, I think they bring Vrabel in right then and there.
Mm.
I thought Vrabel was, if it wasn't the Raiders, I thought he was dead locked in for Dallas, but it looks like McCarthy might stay.
Yeah, I think McCarthy's sticking around another year. As far as what GM you get, you mentioned the Browns and him staying there if Stefanski gets the plug pulled on him. One,
Mhm.
I would be happy taking Stefanski over this way. But two, the assistant GM or vice president of player personnel, Glenn Cook for the Browns, interviewed for the Titans GM job when Rand Carthon got the job, and he did not get the job. Oddly enough, as soon as Vrabel's fired, he goes immediately to the Browns, which is where Glenn Cook is.
Cook is.
So in my mind, I'm feeling Glenn Cook and Vrabel following one another wherever that may be. And maybe that's erroneous way to think about it, but feels right. Unless he just likes his Ohio as a roots. Is that where he's ultimately from?
Yeah, that's where he's ultimately from. Exactly.
Okay. Do you think he goes
Born
back
and bred.
Do you think he possibly goes to college if Day's out?
Well, they said Day's coming back. I thought that
okay.
could be an option. I thought that could be an option. It absolutely could have been, but Day's coming back to Ohio State. Sorry, Buckeye fans. Yeah, if listen, Phil, to answer your question, if I had to bet money on it, I'd say Vrabel ends up with the Raiders. I'd say Ben Johnson ends up with Chicago, and the Jets and Jacksonville. Right now, the only other, and the Saints. And I think Aaron Glenn ends up with the Saints. I think the Jets and Jacksonville. I think the Jets and Jacksonville are fighting for the scraps of left. And I don't think they're scraps. I because one of my favorite candidates in this class, in this coaching carousel, I should say,
Brian Flores.
I like Brian Flores, but he's not my favorite. Liam Cohen, the offensive coordinator for Tampa Bay. Yeah. I love
feel like
the
that
idea
would
of.
be do you think he would be like, I want to stay in Florida, I'm going to Jacksonville?
Maybe he could say, hey, listen, Jacksonville has, the potential of a franchise quarterback already in play. I like that idea better. So maybe that could be it. I wouldn't, that wouldn't shock me too much. But yeah,
Vrabel and Ben Johnson go, and then like even Aaron Glenn, those would probably be my top. Well,
I personally want nothing to do with Aaron Glenn. And it's not to say that I don't like him. Like he's a former Jet and all that. All that hoopla is nice, but I do not want another first-time defensive coordinator. I'm okay with a defensive coordinator, but give me somebody who has some experience. Or I'd rather go for if I'm going to go first time, I want an offensive guy. The game's switching, man. The game's switching to the offensive side of the ball.
Guys switched 20 years ago.
Guys like Liam Cohen are young and upcoming. I mean, this guy has worked his ass off. He was a former college quarterback, coached twice under McVay, two different roles under McVay, coached in Cleveland for a while, was the offensive coordinator at University of Kentucky, where McVay suggested that he goes so that he can call plays and learn how to do that. So, I mean, this guy I think is ready. I think he's ready. Now, the other name that a lot of people has seemed to fall off is no one talks about Todd Monken, if that's an option.
I like Monken a lot. I don't.
Yeah.
Could you see like a Todd Monken Milroe pairing based on like Lamar's shiftiness? Like, is there any translation there, or does that not really fit what you think Monken could do, given what we've seen from him in Tampa Bay, at Georgia?
I think Monken is much more of a traditional offensive mind. I could see a guy like Cliff Kingsbury lining up with Milroe very well.
Sure.
Like I could see that skill set, that pairing work out very well. Yeah, but Monken is a guy that was hot and everyone has seemed to cool off. Listen, if you give me first timers, give me Liam Cohen, give me Monken, give me Joe Brady. I'll take all three of those guys. I'd be willing to roll the dice a year early, thinking that you got something good, even if he's not necessarily ready year one, and let year one be the adjustment.
I loved Brady coming out of he was with New Orleans. He was the wide receiver coach for LSU when Jamar Chase and Jefferson were down there. And then he got the OC role with the Panthers. And I was like, oh, that's a good hiring. And it just imploded and nothing worked under Matt Rule. And then since he's been in Buffalo, just been awesome. The last, year and a half he's been calling plays up there?
Correct.
Definitely nice. I wouldn't hate it. I see some people in the chat talking about any possibility you think Mayo's out in New England after a year.
No, I don't. I think he stays.
I was gonna say that feels very premature.
The only other job that I think really could be, there's a couple, I should say. It's not
Giants, I feel like
Giants are right now 50-50. I don't know what's going on with them. If I had to bet, I think they'd probably keep both Shane and Dable and let them pick their quarterback. But things have kind of gone from bad to like really shitty. You know what I mean? So they could just, have a clean break as well. So the Giants are, 50-50 at this point. I wouldn't be completely shocked if, Tennessee or Cincinnati moved on. Cincinnati more so, especially if they miss the playoffs, because there's going to be a lot of, you're going to have a lot of decisions to happen there with a very, very frugal ownership group. So, like their defense is just not up to par. They just don't have a championship defense. So you might, and you have tons of offensive firepower. You might want to bring in a guy to kind of right the ship on defense, knowing that the talent on the offense can carry it, can continue to carry you.
Maybe Vrabel stays in Ohio but goes there instead of the Browns.
Yeah, maybe. And outside of that, like Jacksonville, obviously, I think if I had to guess, Jacksonville is going to be looking for a new coach. Although they aren't yet, he hasn't been fired yet. I think that could happen.
Yeah, I feel like I'd be surprised to see him there for another year. Man, I feel bad for Trevor Lawrence. 3 coaches in 4 years, 5 years, whatever it is.
4 offensive coordinators. Yeah,
that's terrible. That's not a recipe for success. And we as Jet fans are well aware that swapping offensive coordinators. We've had like 8 offensive coordinators in like 10 years or something like that. It's been silly. See people in the chat talking about college coaches. What about Dabo Swinney, Matt Campbell?
Matt Campbell just re-signed. He just signed an extension with Iowa State. He's probably the one name that I would love to bring in, and that guy's just a winner. But he's staying there. The guy 𝐃𝐨𝐦 𝐂, I believe his name is, from Notre Dame. He's another guy that's been getting buzz. He just signed an extension. I don't know about Dabo Swinney. I don't know if his game is meant for the college or for the pros.
I feel like if you're a top level college coach too, it's hard to like want to make the jump to the pros too. Like you're like kind of a god on your campus if you like recruit well. Even with like the shift to the NIL stuff and everything.
Yeah. I think there's some guys that could do it. Like I think Steve Sarkisian could probably be a good NFL coach. I know he's a coordinator for Atlanta for a little while. Like I said, we talked about Matt Campbell. I think Matt Campbell would be phenomenal. The Jets have had interest in him for the past 2 coaching cycles, and he's turned them down every single time. So I don't expect this time to be any different, especially now that he signed a long-term extension to stay through 2029, I believe.
Rico comes in and says, that's why the Jags scare me. They're probably going to be the most aggressive in getting it right. Would not surprise me at all if Ben Johnson went there. Crazy money, a quarterback with tons of potential. Yeah, I think Khan's just going to throw money at whoever he wants as head coach. Like, let's just fix it. If Ben Johnson is the top guy, like, do you think Ben Johnson would go to Chicago purely because he knows the Bears by coaching against the Bears and likes the young talent that's already there more than Jacksonville?
Yeah, I think Chicago's in a much better financial situation than Jacksonville. They're not paying their rookie quarterback. They're not paying their quarterback yet. You're in year 1. You have 4 more years of rookie contract as opposed to Trevor Lawrence, who's now next year. He's getting paid big bucks, so things get tougher. You know, you have to start really looking and figuring out how to win now when you're paying your quarterback. And I don't know if that's maybe Ben Johnson values Trevor Lawrence more than Caleb Williams. I would doubt that though. So I think you're looking at the overall. You're looking at the talent on the roster. You're looking at the financial situation that the team's in, and you're looking at the quarterback. And there's no denying there's talent in both Chicago and Jacksonville quarterback, but one of them's playing on a rookie deal and the other one's not. That's a big
Eddie
deal.
Says,
that's a big difference.
Joe Burrow is going to want out of Cincinnati if Cincinnati's kind of falling apart. I don't see that. I think he's more locked in there than anything. Because I know obviously he started at Ohio State, but is he another Ohio kid?
Yes.
Or where's he from? So he probably don't want to leave.
No, I don't. He doesn't want to leave. I think he's actually from the Cincinnati area, if I'm not mistaken.
Ooh.
I'm making you sneeze. Sorry.
Yeah, geez, I'm catching your cold through the microphone.
I'm
Stop talking so close to it. Cover your mouth. Let's see. What else we got? JV thinks Ben Johnson's going to fail as a head coach. It might, but that successful as an offensive coordinator would be kind of nice. Woody Johnson and Ben Johnson. Johnson and Johnson all the way around. Yeah, look, I don't have faith we're getting our top choice because of Woody Johnson. When they said Ben Johnson is waiting for the perfect situation, that screams Cincinnati to me. I mean, I could totally see him want to go there. If you have Burrow locked in on a big contract and you got Chase. Did Chase sign his big deal yet or not yet?
Nope. Not yet. They still got to pay him
this offseason.
And Higgins, they could tag Higgins the second time and trade him and maybe acquire like a late round, first round pick for him. So
how's he been doing this year? The last few years, he's just always hurt. I feel like he's not someone I'd want to give up first for.
I think he's probably in that same realm again. I think he's been hurt a bunch this year.
Dante, thank you for the super chat. He says, my girlfriend's a Bills fan, and it's depressing to see a well-run organization while we have the heir to the baby oil and big pharma. Dante, I'm sorry. Could be worse. Your girlfriend could be a Dolphins fan or a Patriots fan. Bills, while it sucks they're winning so many AFC championships right now, or AFC East championships right now, AFC East titles, that's the word I'm trying to find. I don't know. At least Josh Allen's like kind of fun to root for.
And they were once bad too, Dante.
Yes. That's the thing. Like, I don't have as much disdain towards the Bills the way I do the Dolphins and Patriots. Like, I fucking hate the Bills. I hate the Dolphins. I hate the Patriots. The Bills, like, I want them to not win the division. But if I had to pick a team that isn't the Jets to win the division, it's unfortunately probably them. I don't know if I'm the... how do you feel on that front?
Yeah, I kind of feel the same way. Like, I hate the Patriots. I don't like the Dolphins because I don't like the Dolphins fans, and the Bills are just there. It's not that I don't have. Excuse me. I don't have a complete hatred for the Bills. I'm frustrated that they're so goddamn good when we're so goddamn bad. I will say. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, you can finish your thought process.
I was gonna say I will say this about the Bills. As good as Josh Allen is, and I think he's the best quarterback in the league right now, he is a prima donna. The acting and all that stuff.
The flopping kills me.
The flopping and
that's
the acting
worst.
And that drives me up a wall. For as big and tough of a guy as he is, when he does all that stuff, I'm just like, come the fuck on.
It's like watching LeBron flop. The same sort of idea where it's like, dude, you are ripped. Like, you should not be like, or he's like standing there and just throws his head back like the guy hasn't moved a muscle. I don't know. It's annoying. I would say that is my least favorite part about him. JMO comes in, final super chat, says, we haven't seen Ben Johnson call plays without a top offensive line. So maybe we just need the offensive line, and maybe Ben Johnson actually stinks. Maybe that's what it is.
Maybe, Jonathan, we should give flowers and kudos to the GM and the assistant GM there for building a strong foundation in an offensive line. So which I think that, I don't think the Jets' offensive line is in terrible, terrible shape either. I mean, if I'm being honest.
No, I think we're
it
in
looks
like all right shape.
Small sample size. Let's call it what it is. But Olu looks good. John Simpson, he's under contract for another year. Still will only be 27 next year. So that's nice. And he's had a great season.
The weakest returner is probably AVT.
Yeah. Hands down.
It's crazy.
And I'm not even saying that he's not a guarantee to come back either. Well, I mean, he's coming back. They signed him to the 5th year, but they could easily move off of that and try to trade that. If you're not gonna extend him, you might want to get rid of him, and while the value is and let somebody else work out an extension with him. Do I think it's
if he balls out and you just want a comp pick? Like, what about just letting our guys ride out their contracts?
Yeah,
him and Brees in particular.
You could do that. I don't know if I just have trouble kind of swallowing that $16 or $15.5 million cap hit that he's going to cost you next year. But he stayed healthy for the most part this year, right? I think he's only missed one game.
I thought it was maybe two. Maybe, yeah, something like that. Wasn't terrible. Tom, we've reached the end of our hour.
Quick hour, Ryan.
It always is. It's delightful talking with you again. Do I get you next week too?
Yes, sir.
All right. You know what? Maybe we'll have a higher draft pick than number 8. We'll see.
We'll see what happens. We're gonna start talking draft soon. Like really soon. The draft show is really gonna turn into the draft show.
I had like the order pulled up, but the order hasn't really changed, and we're still kind of like sitting around there. So I figured maybe next week we'll take a little bit deeper dive into some of the thoughts that we could get into.
Yeah.
So let us know. Man. You got anything else going on?
No, you know what? Like I said, I was sick all weekend and I'm still fighting this cold. So I didn't put together any videos or anything out on my channel, which is Project Prospect with 𝐷𝐲𝐚𝐧. But expect some stuff this week. I'm just trying to make heads or tails from this head cold that I've been dealing with. So
I hear you, brother. Well, feel better. Boys and girls, thank you so much for hanging out with us. Hit that like button if you enjoy the Talkin' Jets Monday show with myself and 𝐷𝐲𝐚𝐧. We'll be talking draft shortly. This is Jets Talk, signing off. Jets. Jets.